which is, can software do almost, can it be counterintuitive? Can putting in a system actually make something more human, humanize the process and allow for individualization? Or is it, but putting in a system always going to be, making something formulaic? So Roly, what's your view on this?
I think it's a really good question. We certainly don't want to dehumanize the relationship between manager and employee. I think what we're trying to do is, we might be trying to introduce objectivity. So that means using data or perhaps making it easier for people to set expectations in a really clear, mutually agreed way, so that we don't have that problem we talked about earlier, where you're coming back and say, well, in my opinion, you didn't do this, and that's what I wanted all along, and you should have just known that. So ideally, what we're getting towards with using the software is a place where people can be clear on what's expected of them, and that they can prepare in advance, they can think about things clearly, they've got plenty of time to do that, and they can see trends and think progress that they've made over time. And that should hopefully allow a very, very human relationship between the employee and the manager. I think one thing to note is that we're not asking for managers and employees to be best friends. That's going to be difficult if you're charged with setting expectations that perhaps that person doesn't particularly want to achieve, or anything like that. So we're not trying to make that kind of relationship, but we are hoping that managers and employees really work together in a human way to get the best from each other, and that managers can empathize with the individual and see what are the things that are really going to motivate this person, that perhaps who's just joined my team. I know very little about them. I know that I can see their track record at the organization perhaps, but someone who I need to get to know quite quickly and understand what their motivations and drivers are, so that I can help them to do their best.
I think all of that's really interesting. I think the other aspect where you can use software well is, because it gives you data, you can use it to perhaps track your ED and I data. And so that if people are saying, no women ever get promoted around here, right, you might actually have some data that shows, well, actually, that's not true. Or if they say there's no opportunity for anybody in the Manchester office, all the promotions only ever go to London, you might also be able to show that those aren't true. You will also be able to see, are managers treating some kinds of people very differently to how they're treating others at a macro level. So ironically, that is using data to discover if people are being treated individually, ironically, rather than being treated as a group, whether consciously or not consciously. And I think that obviously is very helpful to organizations in today's world, especially where they can't see what's going on all the time, but to get some data to help them analyze that process.
I also think the best systems are enabled a kind of transparency that makes it all feel much more human. So for instance, if feedback is a feature of a performance management process, and an employee has the opportunity to ask for feedback from their peers, from their colleagues in other offices, in not just their manager, for instance, or even really brave to give upward feedback or to request feedback from a much more senior person, and that's an easy process, they can really understand, get much more rich picture about themselves and how they're viewed, and where people see their strengths as well as their development areas. And it's just, that's using the tool, I guess, to be just a more individual experience. Because a lot of organizations still are very formulaic about that kind of stuff. They say, we're coming up to the annual appraisal, so now dictate, say you're 6 people you're going to ask for feedback from, and it's once a year, and it's kind of, that's not very human. And everyone dreads it, because it's kind of like, oh God, it's that time of year when I'm going to get 16 different requests come into my email. But if it's much more fluid, because the system is there throughout, I think that can be a much more sort of human and individual experience.